Welcome, everyone, to a Wednesday episode of the Call Sheet Daily podcast here at the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. It's Whiteboard Wednesday. That's the day where we really talk coaching and X and O's and scheme and all that good stuff. And this is a great opportunity as football kicks off all around the country this week. High school, college, still got to wait a week and a half or so for the NFL. But you have, with these season opening contests, a really interesting challenge presented to coaching staffs all over America. And that is the challenge of preparing for that season opener. It's a unique game. It is different than any other game that you'll play for various reasons. And from a game planning standpoint, and a preparation standpoint, it presents different challenges than any other game on the schedule. And that's our topic today. We're going to look at 5. What are 5 challenges that coaches face in preparing for their season opener? I mean, there are more than 5, but these are ones that are, I think, glaring. And I think that any coach who's listening, anybody really, even if you're a player and you have to prepare yourself, these are all relevant, and we're talking football, obviously, but they're relevant really throughout the sporting spectrum. So let's start with this. I think the first thing that you think about when you get into the game planning phase for your season opener is, who's your opponent going to be? There is always uncertainty about your opponent. I mean, you can look at who they were a year earlier, but in the college and high school game, each year your roster turns over due to graduation. And so you have to look at, well, where are they going to be strong? Where are they going to be weak? Do they have a new coordinator on either side of the ball? Is the scheme going to change? Some staffs that have been together and that are sort of system staffs, you can kind of hang your hat on knowing what to expect. Hey, this is a shotgun wing T team, and they're going to run a 4-3 cover 4, and they've been doing that for the last decade as long as this staff has been together, and that's what we're going to get. But with many other staffs, there's turnover. Again, particularly at the high school and college level when coaches are moving jobs for one reason or another. And with new coordinators come new schemes. And because teams are extremely vanilla in the preseason, in the scrimmage schedules, they don't show a lot. So you never know what you're going to get. That is one of the scariest things as a coach going into a season opener. What am I going to get from this team? I can look at what they did in their scrimmages. I can go back and look at last year's film, but how much of that will actually be relevant? Because, it's the case. Just about everybody has something up their sleeve. How much? If it's a gadget play or if it's a one-off type play, hey, we're holding this reverse that we're going to run. Fine. That's not that big a deal. But you do worry sometimes about bigger things, like, are they going to come out in something that they've been practicing all summer that we're not prepared for? And it makes you very nervous. So the first big challenge, the uncertainty of your opponent, because you don't have the relevant game film from this particular season to lean in on like you do in subsequent weeks. The second big challenge is the uncertainty of your own team. Who are you going to be? You spend the entire summer with your team practicing and working out, and you're around them, and you know what your own strengths are, and you know what your own weaknesses are, and you do it over and over again. But it's different when the lights go on for real. When the lights go on for real, you never know exactly how your players will react, particularly when we're talking about high school kids, 15, 16, 17 years old. How are they going to react? Are they going to be mature enough to handle the Friday night lights, the big crowd, all the eyes, all the attention, the momentum swings. How will they handle adversity? When they're faced with real adversity, the scoreboard is now on. The coaches are on the sideline. They're not standing behind the huddle like they are in scrimmages. How will they handle it when it's just them? As a coach, you have to feel confident that you've prepared the 11 individuals that you have on the field together to be able to handle problems on their own, to problem solve. When things aren't going their way, you have to trust that you've prepared them well enough to be able to move forward. In our program at Ocean City High School, we call that having a next play mentality. You have to trust that you have instilled in them a next play mentality so that they can just focus on the next play regardless of what happened before, good or bad. You have to hope, because the first game is always highly charged with emotion. You have to hope that you've prepared them for the emotional swings that occur and really discipline them to not be too emotional, to not allow their emotions to cloud their judgment or their actions. And for the 11 of them to have a rallying cry, man, hey, next play, let's go. Next play, let's go. And that's scary because, again, you don't know. You don't know. So whether it's the uncertainty of your opponent or the uncertainty of your own team, the first game's really scary for a coach because coaches are creatures of habit. Coaches like routine. Coaches like scheduling. Coaches like having a pretty good idea what to expect. Uncertainty makes coaches anxious. And there are no greater uncertainties than those that are presented in your first game of the season. Here's a third challenge that you face. I call it the rabbit hole effect. And it can happen in a couple of different ways. When it comes to your opponent, you can go down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out what they're going to do. Yeah, they're a 4-3 cover 4 defense, but what if they get into a bear look? Because we're going to run the ball pretty well. And we run the sweep and the power play well, and we're pulling our guards. What if they decide to get into a bear look to make it hard to pull our guys? Should we spend a lot of time practicing for a bear look? What if they're pretty athletic? They're a cover 4 team, but they're athletic and they think they can lock us down man to man. And they're going to prepare and they're going to play a lot of cover 1 or even cover 0 against us. How much of that do we practice against? How much time do you spend practicing for things you're never going to see in an actual game? You can go down the rabbit hole of what if they do this? And find yourself spending an awful lot of practice time unnecessarily on things that will not be relevant to what actually happens in the game. And that could be a guessing game. That could be a huge guessing game. And I think you have to make a decision based upon who your opponent is, what you think they can handle, the past history of this coaching staff. Maybe you've got a coach who's new to this school, and you're going to go back and see what he's done at previous schools, in previous openers. Have they been different in their opening game than they've been in other games throughout the season? Because, again, they've had all summer to prepare for you, and maybe they're going to throw something at you that they think will catch you off guard. And now you have to make a decision as to how much you're going to actually plan for that. The other version of the rabbit hole is when you go down it with your own team. You have an entire summer to get ready for this opener. Again, in a normal week, you get 6 days. You play a game, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the NFL. You got 6 days to prepare for the next one. You play another game. But with your season opener, you have an entire summer. In New Jersey, you can start practicing in June when the previous year's spring schedule ends. And you don't kick off until the end of August. You have 2 months to prepare for your season opener. You know how much install you can do in 2 months? I mean, you can build a call sheet that is the size of an old school phone book. And that's a danger. Because if you find yourself installing 100 plays in the summertime, how many of them are you good at? And how many can you actually use in a given game? On offense, on defense, either way, you're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood. In a high school football game, you're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to maybe 60 snaps on either side of the ball. And in college, it's more like 60 to 70. Same with the NFL. 50 or so snaps. That's what you're going to get. If you have 100 some plays on your call sheet, you literally cannot get to all of them. So with 2 months to prepare for that season opener, there is a danger in simply putting in too much. And again, in doing so, practicing a bunch of stuff you'll never actually use in the game. That is one of the worst things you can do as a coach. Spend practice time unnecessarily on things that you're not actually going to use or that are going to benefit you directly in a game. Your practice time has to replicate what's going to happen in a game. If you've got 15 plays for 3rd and long, because you've had all summer to work on stuff and you're like, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this, and you just start adding, you've wasted a lot of time. Because on average, you're going to face 3 3rd and longs in a given game. 3 3rd and longs. I mean, that's really it on average, unless you're terrible. If you're terrible, you're probably going to have a lot more. So maybe you need to load up on 3rd and longs. But in a normal situation, 3rd and 8 or more, you're not going to see that more than 3 times in a game. So if you've got, maybe you don't want exactly 3 3rd and long calls, but if you've got more than 5, you've got too much, and you're now practicing unnecessarily for that situation. The rabbit hole effect is real for the season opener because of the amount of time and the uncertainty that exists in that game. Here's a 4th thing, situational planning. Even though the internet's an amazing resource and you can go on the internet and you can find all these coaching resources that help you to plan for a game, and they'll give you situational sheets and you can try to check off every single box and say to yourself, okay, man, I've covered it all. I've covered every situation we're possibly going to encounter. Whether it's onside kicks, whether it's 3rd and longs, whether it's 2-minute offense, whether it's overtime scenarios. Inevitably, it always feels like there's something you forget. When Steve Scanlon was on a guest on our show here a couple weeks ago, he talked about getting to a season opener and realizing he forgot to teach his quarterback how to clock the ball. I remember one year as an offensive coordinator, we had a quarterback who had been inserted into the starting lineup a couple weeks in because the guy we'd started the year with, he really wasn't getting it done. And we basically converted a wide receiver to quarterback because he was a really good runner and he could throw a good deep ball. And we went to a shotgun spread. And in that first game, we did really well. And we had, we were going to win the game and it's at the very, very end. And all of a sudden I realized I had never taught this kid how to take a knee. And he's never taken a snap from under center in his life. So we literally had to draw up a victory formation on a whiteboard as we were sending the kids out for the final series of the game. And he took the victory snap from shotgun and kneeled down with a bunch of dudes standing around him. You're always fearful that you will forget a situation. And if it ever comes back to bite you in that season opener, it feels like an unforgivable deed, an act of coaching malpractice, as they often say. So it's a terrifying thing, man. You go over and over. Have I checked off every situational box? And you got to make sure that you have. And here's a 5th thing. This will be our last one. I've always found it tricky to know exactly where the sweet spot is as far as your team's conditioning for the opener, because you haven't played a full football game. Obviously, you practice throughout the summer. You have a couple scrimmages but the scrimmages aren't full football games. I mean, your first scrimmage is oftentimes some kind of 10-10-10 thing where you're running 10 plays on offense and defense, a very controlled environment. Maybe your starters play the equivalent of a half worth of football. And then you have a quote-unquote game scrimmage, which is run under game conditions. But because you're fearful of injury, maybe you'll play your starters into the third quarter, but nobody plays their starters much beyond that. 2.5 quarters is pretty standard as far as that goes. And then you have to kick it off for real in opening week and play 4 quarters of football. Are you going to be physically conditioned to do so? The NFL teams face this challenge because they play their starters very infrequently in the preseason, and then they got to go play 4 quarters. And it's September and it's hot. Are you going to run out of gas? If you're in a close game, late in that game, are you going to run out of gas? Or have you found the sweet spot? Our answer has always been to try to make practice a conditioner in and of itself, to try to make the pace and the tempo at practice intense enough that it replicates what's going on in a game. And yes, you condition, and yes, you whatever your various way of conditioning is to try to get your kids in shape in terms of just straight running. But for me, the best conditioning is all football specific. It's the type of stuff that takes place on a football field in a real football environment. It doesn't take place on a track. So, can you make practices intense enough that they replicate what the game is going to be like, and you do it over and over and over again throughout the summer so that when the actual real contest arrives, you won't get gassed? Regardless, even if you've covered every one of those boxes and you feel confident in it, there's nothing more nerve-wracking than when you're standing there and they're playing the national anthem before kickoff on opening night, and those thoughts are running through your head as you listen to the anthem play, and maybe you look around the stadium. You allow yourself the luxury one time of just taking a broad angle view of the environment and soaking in the crowd and the band and the atmosphere and all that good stuff. But ultimately, those thoughts will run through your head. Are we ready? Are we ready? And honestly, for me at least, the answer is almost always, I don't know. I don't know. I hope so. I hope we've done it right. My last 7 years as head coach, we went 6-1 in openers. My first 5 years as head coach, we went 0-5 in openers. So 0-5 to start my head coaching career, 6-1 to end my coaching career. I would like to think I learned some things along the way about how to prepare a team throughout the summer. But still, there's nothing that makes you feel certain. And that is why game planning for the season opener is the most challenging game plan of the entire year. All right, to all those coaches who are kicking it off this week at Ocean City High School, we're kicking it off tomorrow on Thursday. For all those coaches who are kicking it off, best of luck to you. And I hope you've gotten it right. I hope you've checked the boxes and you feel ready to roll. All right, that is our Whiteboard Wednesday episode. Join me tomorrow when we debut The Portal. That's our college football show. My guest will be Big G, Sean Gurley, one of the resident college football experts here at Fans First. We will break down the massive Ohio State-Texas clash on Saturday and go over some of the other highlights of this week's college football schedule. So don't miss that show with Big G tomorrow. Until then, everybody, have a great day. Take care.